Hello, happy Friday. Let me know if you can see me, hear me, and let me know how you're doing today. Y'all, I'm so nervous about doing this topic, but this is something that has been weighing heavily on my heart since we started doing rock and roll reactions, and then more so when we started doing jazz reaction. So this is something that I want to talk about, and we're just gonna do it. So here goes. So welcome to my podcast. My intentions with this podcast is to share some of my feelings with you all about the music we've done on the channel, what I've learned, and just interacting with you guys on a more personal level, because sometimes when we do reactions, we can't read all of the comments. As much as we try, we cannot read all the comments, but this allows me to connect with you in real time. And this podcast isn't really about being right or being wrong. It is really about getting conversations started and centering around music, but also about everyday life, things we experience. So, welcome. I will attempt not to ramble, but I must tell you, I am very nervous. Like, my heart has been palpitating since 10 o'clock since I decided to do this topic. This topic is going to be very sensitive for some, but I implore you to not just read the title of this video, but actually listen to what I have to say. Last week, I did a podcast about country music, and a lot of people really didn't take a chance and listen. They just seen the title and they ran with it. I think the title was, let's see, what was the title that I did last week? And you think I would remember, but I don't, because we just do so much content that I don't remember. So bear with me, guys, and I'll link it down below. And it doesn't want to work to tell me come on, YouTube. And that's another thing why I was afraid to do this topic. YouTube is very sensitive about some topics. It doesn't want me to talk about certain topics, and this might be flagged. If that is the case, you will have to rewatch this or catch it later on the Patreon. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but I feel silenced, and it's very weird. So the podcast last week was No One Cares About Country Music. And I was talking about how country music was dying. So definitely check that out after this podcast and give it a listen. But today we're talking about music is not divisive. People are. And since we started doing rock and roll reactions, rock and roll is such a fun genre, but somehow you see in the comments the divisiveness. Well, when we do certain artists, people like to leave their opinion, and it has bothered me for a long time. especially with the Elvis reactions. The Elvis reactions, a lot of people like to say that Elvis was the R word, and that is something that we had to dig into. A lot of people get defensive of Elvis because they automatically assume that we might feel a certain way, that Elvis was a thief, Elvis was this, that, and the third. And so T and I, we recently started watching the Elvis movie that came out, and it was very informative. And we also are going to be watching documentaries of Elvis. People have suggested to do Elvis in the Ghetto. And people tend to put Chuck Berry and Elvis against one another, and I don't like it. You'll see in the comments, if you go to some of our Elvis videos, which we said we will not be doing Elvis anymore on the channel. Elvis will have to be on Patreon because it navigates away from the music. And it's funny how people tell me, oh, why does everything have to be about race? But at the same time bring up race when it comes to Elvis and whether he's the king of rock and roll, and if Chuck Berry is the godfather of rock and roll. And you'll see the arguments, and sometimes we'll delete them because we just want it to be about our reaction. And sometimes it can't be about our reaction because people think we're being disrespectful. We're supposed to react a certain way to Elvis. But it can't be avoided any longer. Elvis grew up around black people, and you can tell that he loved black people. You cannot do a genre, especially during that time, like Elvis did, and not appreciate black people. He was threatened with jail, not just for moving his hips like a black person, but the way he did things. And it's really unfortunate. And Chuck Berry, some people might consider him the king of rock and roll. And I think that it shouldn't really be an argument, because your opinion is your opinion, whether that person has the record sales or not. Your opinion is your opinion. But I do want to say, and this is what people fail to realize, and I'm so sorry that I'm talking slow, but this is a hard conversation for me to have. And it shouldn't be. Rock and roll is an American genre, whether you are black or white. It is an American genre. And I find that even with country music, there are people who attempt to gatekeep. Oh, because you are black, you can't do this style of music. Oh, because you are white, you cannot do this style of music. And because this country has the history that it has, I can see why music seems divisive. But there are people who are attempting to keep that thought process alive today. And without realizing that without one another, we would not have the music that we have today. We have been inspired by one another through the good, the bad, the ups, or whatever. We have inspired one another, and whether people like it or not, we share the same culture. If you are from the South, You know this. We eat the same food. We cook the same way. Many times our dialects are the same. And this is not to erase the subcultures that we have in America. Also, let me point out this conversation will be strictly about American culture, because I know some people will come in and say, well, if I'm Japanese and I have historically or traditional Japanese song, an American can't, or a white person or a black person can't come along and sing this song. That's not what I'm talking about here. I want to stick to strictly American culture, okay? And American culture involves us all. If your ancestors have been here for 100 years, we share the same culture, whether you like it or not. And I remember someone, and I also noticed that people don't like for me to say, oh, this white guy or anything like that, and try to offend me by saying, oh, but you're a black girl. I know I'm a black girl. You know, I see color, okay? But I think it is beautiful. I think our differences makes us beautiful. I think the music and the history in this country, like any other country, is filled with turmoil, but it has made us who we are today. And I think we should let go of the divisiveness and who can sing what, okay? Moving on to the Beatles. No, we'll get to the Beatles later. Jazz. So recently we've done some, I know, skates, right? So recently we've done some jazz music, and we started with Dave Brubeck Band. And I was really disappointed in some of the comments. Okay. This Dave Brubeck Band was a band that really fought for racial integration. YouTube, please do not flag this video, because this is what we need to talk about, okay? So Eugene Wright was a black bassist in the Dave Brubeck Band, and our first reaction was Take 5. And this song is so iconic. The video that we reacted to, I will link it in here. There was a piano solo, a drum solo, and what else? Saxophone solo. But there wasn't a bass solo, and it seemed to be edited out. And I was really looking forward to hearing Eugene play. And it was something that I noticed. I said, oh no, I was looking forward to the bassist solo. And I was like, I wonder why that they didn't give him a solo. Now, this was during the 60s, okay? We know what was going on during the 60s, and I wasn't sure. I felt some type of way. So I wasn't sure. We did some research, but the comments were like, some were informative. One person told us, well, a lot of times in jazz solos, the bassist is left out. And since we aren't jazz experts, I was like, okay, that's something I can research and learn about. We weren't attempting to make this about race, but it was in the back of my mind, because it purposely seemed edited out. And some people were upset with us. They said, why do you have to make it about race? We said it was the 60s it was the 60s, and we know what was going on during the time. However, I didn't think it was Dave and the band who left his solo out or purposely left him out. I thought this was amazing that during this time, this was a interracial band. I thought they were ahead of their time. So people jumped to conclusions and made the assumption that I was making it seem like Dave was like the R word and they left him out. And a lot of people don't like having these conversations. There was one person who said, I really enjoy your channel, but I didn't think that you guys would stoop this low and make it about race. Although the civil rights movement was going on at the time, I don't think critically, he said that people would cut him out. And I was like, that doesn't really make sense to me, because we talk about the media all the time and how they push an agenda. And we even spoke about it in this video, how the media really pushes divisiveness. And I never thought that people would misconstrue that. And so to make this conversation make a little bit more sense, because I think people like to talk about one side of things. People like to focus on who did the bad things. Oh, white people did this and all white people are bad. I feel there's a side of people that only like to focus on that. Then I think there's another side that only wants to focus on, well, the good that people have done. But there is a middle ground where you cannot have one without the other. And I think that's why Dave Brubeck's band is such an important reaction that we have done, because there is history behind this band. And Dave Brubeck's band really put their career on the line. And they're, in my opinion, their lives on the line, to have a black man in their band. And this is the history that needs to be talked about. So I'm going to read this comment. You should not be disappointed because every song is arranged in a certain way, and I'm pretty sure Dave Brubeck didn't arrange the song to exclude an African American. Every song doesn't have a guitar solo or drum solo. It has nothing to do with race. And so my response was, of course, Dave Brubeck wouldn't. The fact that Eugene was in the band speaks volumes. That's not what was implied in this discussion. What was stated was the network, i.e. the media, had an issue with Eugene. And after further research, the band ran into this issue often when it came to performances. The band would not play if Eugene was not allowed to play. These conversations are hard to have, and everything isn't always about race. But when it is, it's important to acknowledge it, especially since people like Dave and the band was essentially fighting back against something that was lawful at the time. Very powerful. It would not be ignored no matter how comfortable. And right here it says, a socially engaged artist, Brubeck constantly fought for racial integration and equality both at home and abroad during times when it was not the popular thing to do. And I think that's an understatement, okay? While serving the U.S. Army, Brubeck organized the Wolfpack, a racially integrated music group in America's then segregated armed forces. So for me, when people say it's not about race and just focus on the music, we wouldn't have this music if it wasn't for people like Dave Brubeck, okay? I don't think people understand that. And I feel like, of course, maybe I'll have to do more research, but I'm not sure because I don't think people want to talk about it. But you can't talk about one thing and then not talk about this. This is important history. Music is history. To not focus on this and to be offended that I noticed something because it makes you feel some type of way, you completely erase what Dave was fighting for. You completely erase it. And so if you just want to talk about, oh, it's just about the music, for people like Dave Brubeck, for people like Eugene, for people like Little Richard, for people like James Brown, for people like Elvis, I believe it was more than about the music. And I feel that when I hear the music. And to not have these conversations because you're scared or you don't like the way it portrays a certain people, I can't do that. And I know there's other channels that are perfectly okay with that. You know, I'm not. And this is why I'm doing the podcast. And hopefully I'll get more comfortable talking about this. But can you imagine having to deal with something at this time? And I can't, but I'm grateful for it. And so this won't die, I believe we have to have these conversations. I cannot listen to this music and completely omit what was happening at the time, because jazz was like, in a way, fighting back. A lot of people thought it was noise. A lot of people thought that this is not how music should sound. A lot of people felt that you can't do this music. A lot of people told Elvis, you can't do this music. You can't dance like that. And I think people forget. They like to focus on the good and, oh, Elvis, he was such this, that, and the third. And yes, he was. But imagine the things he had to go through in order to do those things. And the people, I remember in the Elvis movie, they showed the relationship between B.B. King and Elvis. And a lot of people didn't want B.B. King to play in certain places. And it took people like Elvis to you know, kind of, in so many words, fight against that. You know what I mean? Y'all don't want to talk about it, but when you forget about things, you make the same mistakes. So, yeah. Now, I want to read some of your comments. Hey, Connie. Hey, Skates. What's up, Damar, Jamesy in the house, John, Metal Mark? Thank y'all for being here, and thank y'all for having this conversation with me. Connie says, nothing upsets me more. We are all the same race, the human race. I hate the devil for spreading hate. And are those people confuse y'all with other YouTube couples? I think so. I think people do confuse us with other YouTube couples. How, I don't know, but it's whatever. Lee said, it's sad but true, trying to put us all against each other. And so y'all know that we do Tom MacDonald reactions, and I want to read some of the comments from the Tom MacDonald reaction, because this is why we do these discussions at the end. So we have one person for Tom MacDonald, and Tom MacDonald, he doesn't care. he has made it to where he says what he wants. Me, I'm afraid to speak up, and the reason is because I've had so many bad experiences. Like, when your thoughts differ from the majority of people, it can get you in trouble. And I've had people actually come after me, and in a way I think it's a way to silence me, and I have to, in so many ways, let that go and still do what I think is right. So this guy says, his name is, this is a lady, Toy Mom of 3. She says, wish we could all organize, Black, white, Asian, Latino, all Americans, and march against media and the government, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, peacefully, and change this. Another one says, how the hell do we get out of this mess is my question. Some people realize what is actually going on, but I think most either don't understand it or just don't care. He says, my wife doesn't care. She just wants to live her life. It's like lemlings headed to a cliff, and the ones that say stop are treated like idiots and told to keep running. It's so damn frustrating. And I agree. It's very frustrating. And a lot of times I feel that I have to bite my tongue in these videos. And even when we're doing Elvis videos, and Elvis is so entertaining. And one time we were doing a live, and I felt like Elvis was a funny dude. And the way he was moving, it was just very entertaining. We was having a good time. Now, it was the 70s, and he had sideburns, and I was like, oh my God, look at those sideburns. And people, like, you're so disrespectful. They assumed, for whatever reason, that I was being disrespectful to Elvis. And it's I believe, a form of gatekeeping, because people feel that Elvis, people always say Elvis is a thief, Elvis is that, this, that, and the third. But I want to be able to enjoy this music. I want to be able to laugh. I want to be able to have a good time. I want to be able to clap my hands. I want to be able to have discussions that I notice without people being divisive. And that's why I said in the description that the truth doesn't care who tells it. And I think it's the same with music. Music doesn't care who sings it. When you look at music, there are notes, It doesn't say who can play this, who can sing this. I believe music is sent from God. And I really don't believe God will say only a black person can sing this song, or only a white person can sing this song. Oh, you can't do this. But people do. And that's why I'm talking about this today. Music is not divisive. People are. And I'm going to keep having these conversations until something changes. So, hey, Anthony. What are those lines and dots? They're music notes. Music notes. Yeah. No. The paper is white and the music notes are black.